An immigrant shared her meal with a lost child, an act of kindness that would change the course of her life in ways she could never have imagined. Sophia Nazari stood at the edge of Westlake Park, clutching her worn canvas bag as the autumn wind whipped strands of dark hair across her face. 3 months in America, and still the vastness of this new world overwhelmed her. The buildings stretched toward clouds that seemed impossibly distant. The streets buzzed with people who moved with such purpose, such certainty. She found her usual bench, the one with the small chip on the left armrest that somehow made it feel like hers. From here, she could watch the boats on the lake while eating her lunch before returning to her job cleaning offices in the towering building across the street. The bench was her sanctuary, 15 precious minutes where she could breathe, where the weight of displacement might ease just enough to make the afternoon bearable. Today's lunch was simple, half a falafel sandwich and a small container of homemade lentil soup she'd prepared in the pre-dawn hours before her first shift at the coffee shop. Not much, but it was warm, and the spices reminded her of home. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unwrapped the sandwich from its foil. 28 years old, and sometimes she felt ancient, her body aching with the effort of rebuilding a life from nothing but determination and memories. That's when she noticed him. A small figure half hidden behind the trunk of an enormous oak tree, perhaps 20 feet away. A child, watching her with wide, solemn eyes. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, with an expensive-looking navy blue coat that hung slightly too large on his slender frame. His black hair was neatly trimmed but wind-blown, and despite the quality of his clothing, something about his posture spoke of fear. His shoulders curved inward protectively, and even from this distance, Sophia could see the slight tremble in his hands. "Are you hungry?" Sophia asked, her accent thick around the English words that still felt foreign on her tongue. She hadn't meant to speak, but something in the boy's face reminded her of her younger brother back home. That same watchful wariness, the careful assessment of strangers. The boy hesitated, then stepped from behind the tree. His shoes were polished leather, incongruous with the dried mud splashed across them. No adult accompanied him. No frantic parent calling his name. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," he said in perfect, crisp English that carried the faintest hint of an accent Sophia couldn't place. Sophia nodded and offered a small smile. "That is very smart." She tore her sandwich in half and held out a portion, the gesture transcending language barriers. "But perhaps we could share lunch." "I am Sophia." Something in the boy's expression shifted, hunger winning out over caution. He approached slowly, like a wary cat, and stopped just beyond arm's reach. "I'm Ari," he said, the name falling from his lips with practiced precision. "Just Ari?" Sophia asked, placing the half-sandwich on the empty space beside her and offering without pressure. "Just Ari," he confirmed, eyeing the food. Then, after a moment's hesitation, "For now." The cryptic addition raised questions, but Sophia simply nodded. Secrets were something she understood. Everyone carried them, especially those who had left their homes behind. She removed the lid from her thermos of soup and offered that too. "It might be different than what you are used to," she said. "Spices from my country." Ari took the sandwich half and settled on the bench, maintaining careful distance. His first bite was tentative, but the second came quickly. Sophia recognized the hunger of someone who hadn't eaten in too long. "Which country?" he asked between careful bites, his manners refined despite his obvious hunger. "Iran," Sophia answered, watching his reaction. Many Americans stiffened at this revelation, their minds filled with news stories and prejudices. But Ari merely nodded. "My teacher showed us on a map. You're very far from home." The simplicity of his observation caught Sophia off guard. "Yes," she said softly. "Very far?" They ate in silence for a moment, sharing the soup between them. The boy's refined movements seemed at odds with his situation. His posture, even while eating hurriedly, maintained a certain dignity that seemed practiced rather than natural for a child his age. "Are you lost?" Sophia finally asked, unable to ignore the absence of any searching adult, any panicked parent. Ari's shoulders tensed. "Not exactly." His fingers tightened around the sandwich. "I know where I am, just not where to go." "Where are your parents?" Sophia kept her voice gentle, free of accusation. The boy looked down at his muddy shoes, his answer barely audible. "I don't know where my father is right now. My mother is—" His voice faltered. "She's gone." The familiar ache of loss resonated in Sophia's chest. Gone. Such a small word for such an enormous absence. She understood all too well the way that single syllable could contain oceans of grief. "I'm sorry," she said, the words inadequate but sincere. Ari nodded, accepting her sympathy with a composure that seemed too practiced for someone so young. Another red flag raised in Sophia's mind. "Who brought you to the park?" she asked. His gaze darted toward the street, then back to the remains of his sandwich. "I came with Mr. Kavrin, but I ran away from him." The confession tumbled out, followed immediately by a look of regret, as though he'd revealed too much. Sophia noticed a bruise barely visible at his wrist, just beneath the sleeve of his expensive coat. Her heart constricted. "Is Mr. Kavrin your guardian?" she asked carefully. "He works for my father," Ari said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He's supposed to keep me safe until arrangements are made. But I heard him on the phone. He's going to take me somewhere else, somewhere my father won't find me." Alarm bells rang in Sophia's mind. Human trafficking wasn't just something that happened in her homeland. It happened everywhere, even in America. This well-dressed, well-spoken boy with no parent in sight set off every protective instinct she possessed. "Ari," she said gently, "I think we should find a police officer to help you." Terror flashed across his face. "No police. Mr. Kavrin said they've been bribed. Said they'd send me back to him or worse." His voice cracked. "Please. He'll find me if we go to them." Sophia checked her watch. 7 minutes before she needed to return to work. 7 minutes to make a decision that could change, or perhaps endanger, both their lives. "Do you have anyone else? Anyone you trust who could help?" she asked. Ari shook his head, then reconsidered. "My father has a friend in the embassy, but I don't know how to find him. I don't even know which embassy." Embassy. The word hung in the air between them. Not the term most American children would use. Combined with his faint accent and formal manners, it painted a picture that made Sophia's pulse quicken. "Ari," she said carefully, "what country are you from?" His eyes met hers, measuring, assessing. Finally, "Navardia." Sophia's breath caught. The small European country had been in the news recently. Political upheaval, whispers of attempted coups, the royal family supposedly securing their safety through diplomatic channels. She recalled images of solemn-faced monarchs on television screens she'd glimpsed while cleaning office lobbies. "Your father," she said, the realization dawning slowly. "He's not just any man from Navardia, is he?" Ari's eyes filled with tears that he quickly blinked away. "He's the king," he whispered. "And if Mr. Kavrin succeeds, I'll never see him again." The world seemed to tilt beneath Sophia. An immigrant shared her meal with a lost child, a child who was apparently separated royalty. The absurdity of it might have made her laugh if the fear in the boy's eyes hadn't been so raw, so real. Her 15 minutes were nearly up. She needed to return to work or risk losing the job she'd fought so hard to secure. But how could she leave him here, alone and afraid? "Come with me," she said, gathering her things quickly. "Just for now, until we figure out what to do." Relief flooded the boy's face, followed immediately by concern. "But what if he sees us? What if he's looking?" Sophia scanned the park, noticing for the first time a tall man in a dark coat moving methodically between the trees and benches, his gaze searching. Something about his movements, too controlled, too predatory, sent ice through her veins. "Is that him?" she whispered, not pointing, not wanting to draw attention. Ari followed her gaze and went rigid. "Yes," he breathed. "That's Mr. Kavrin." Sophia made an instant decision, based on nothing but instinct and the terror in the child's eyes. "When I stand, walk close beside me. Like you belong with me." She pulled a scarf from her bag and handed it to him. "Cover your hair just in case he looks our way." Ari nodded, wrapping the colorful fabric around his head without question. The sight of him, this apparently royal child wearing her threadbare scarf from the markets of Tehran, struck Sophia as both absurd and strangely right. "Ready?" she asked. He nodded, shifting closer to her side as they stood. Sophia placed a protective hand on his shoulder, trying to project a casualness she didn't feel as they walked toward the park exit opposite from where Mr. Kavrin searched. "Don't look back," she murmured. "Just keep walking normally." The distance to the street seemed endless. Each step echoed with risk. The risk of being seen, of being caught, of being wrong about the entire situation. What if this child was making up fantastic stories? What if she was abducting a boy who belonged with his guardian? But the bruise on his wrist and the genuine fear in his eyes convinced her otherwise. Truth often revealed itself in the smallest details. They reached the sidewalk and merged with the flow of pedestrians. Sophia guided them toward her workplace, mind racing. She couldn't bring a child to clean offices with her, but she couldn't abandon him either. "I have to work," she explained quietly as they walked, "but there's a small break room where you could wait, just for a few hours until my shift ends. Then we'll find help, the right kind." "The embassy," Ari insisted. "We need to find the Navardian embassy." Sophia nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. How would an undocumented immigrant with broken English convince embassy officials that she'd found their missing prince? They'd more likely call the very police Ari feared. They approached the office building where she worked as a cleaner, its glass facade reflecting the cloudy sky. The security guard at the entrance knew her, nodded to her each day. Would he notice the boy? Question his presence? "When we go inside," Sophia instructed, "stay close. If anyone asks, you're my nephew visiting for the day. Your mother, my sister, had an emergency. Understand?" Ari nodded, his royal composure momentarily replaced by childlike nervousness. She squeezed his shoulder gently. "It will be okay," she promised, hoping it wasn't a lie. The security guard barely glanced up as they entered, his attention focused on his crossword puzzle. Sophia guided Ari to the service elevator at the back of the building, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. Once inside the elevator, Ari leaned against her, the formality falling away to reveal simply an exhausted, frightened child. The slight weight of him against her side awakened something protective in Sophia, something she'd thought had died along with the family she'd left behind. "I'm scared," he admitted in a small voice as the elevator climbed. Sophia's hand found his, squeezing gently. "Me too," she confessed. "But being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you continue even when you are." The boy looked up at her, something like recognition flickering in his eyes. "My mother used to say something similar." Before Sophia could respond, the elevator doors opened onto the 14th floor, where rows of cubicles waited for their evening cleaning. Her supervisor, Mrs. Chen, stood checking inventory by the supply closet. Her eyebrows rose at the sight of Ari. "Sophia? Who is this?" The question held no accusation, only surprise. Sophia swallowed her panic and smiled apologetically. "My nephew, Mrs. Chen. My sister had emergency and no one to watch him. Just for today. He will be quiet, I promise. He can stay in break room." Mrs. Chen's expression softened as she looked at Ari, who had adopted a perfect picture of childhood innocence. "Poor thing. Of course he can stay in the break room. There are some magazines and I think even some children's books from the holiday collection drive." Relief washed through Sophia. "Thank you. You are very kind." Mrs. Chen waved away the gratitude. "Family emergencies happen to everyone. But next time, call ahead, okay?" She smiled at Ari. "Would you like a soda from the machine, young man?" Ari glanced at Sophia, then nodded shyly. "Yes, please." "Thank you, ma'am." His impeccable manners brought an approving smile to Mrs. Chen's face. She led them to the break room, stopping to purchase a soda from the vending machine. "You stay here and be good for your aunt," she instructed, handing him the can. When Mrs. Chen left, Ari turned to Sophia with wide eyes. "She believed us," he whispered, sounding almost surprised at their success. "People often see what they expect to see," Sophia replied, remembering how many borders she'd crossed, how many officials she'd passed with nothing but a confident stride and downcast eyes. "Now, I have to work, but I'll check on you when I can. Don't leave this room, understand? No matter what." Ari nodded solemnly. "I promise." Sophia hesitated at the door, suddenly reluctant to leave him. 2 hours, she said. "Then we'll figure out what to do next." For the next hour, Sophia cleaned offices with mechanical efficiency, her mind elsewhere. Her phone, a basic model with prepaid minutes she carefully rationed, had access to the internet. During her next break, she would search for information about the Navardian royal family, try to confirm Ari's identity. She checked on him twice, finding him reading a dog-eared children's book both times. The second time, she brought him a granola bar from her bag, watching as he devoured it with the same controlled hunger as before. "Are you really a prince?" she asked quietly, the question escaping before she could stop it. Ari looked up, his eyes suddenly ancient in his young face. "I am now," he said. "I wasn't supposed to be. My cousin was the crown prince. But there was an accident." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't think it was really an accident." The implications chilled Sophia. "And your mother?" Pain flashed across his features. "She got sick very suddenly. Father didn't trust the doctors anymore. He was arranging for us to leave the country when they came, men with guns. Father and I escaped through a tunnel, but we got separated at the airport. His hands trembled. Mr. Kavrin was supposed to take me to my father in New York. But then I heard him talking on the phone about a cabin in the mountains where no one would find me. The pieces aligned in Sophia's mind. A royal coup, a child heir suddenly valuable as either a hostage or an obstacle to be removed. It sounded like the plot of a film, yet the trembling boy before her was undeniably real. "I'll help you find your father," she promised, the words emerging before she'd fully considered their weight. "But you must stay here until I finish work." Gratitude flooded his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'll repay you someday, I swear it." Sophia shook her head. "No debts between us? Just be safe." During her next break, huddled in a supply closet, Sophia searched frantically on her phone. The Navardian News reported Prince Ari missing, presumed kidnapped during an attempted evacuation. King Thomas was reportedly in diplomatic talks in New York, working to secure international support against the faction that had seized partial control of the government. The boy's story aligned with reality, which meant the danger was real too. By the time her shift ended, Sophia had formed a fragile plan. The Navardian embassy was located downtown, about 30 minutes by bus. They would go there directly and ask for asylum for the prince. The risk of being turned away, or worse, of Sophia being detained for her own undocumented status, hung heavy in her mind. But what choice did they have? She collected Ari from the break room, relieved to find him safe and waiting. Mrs. Chen had gone, leaving only the night security guard downstairs. As they rode the elevator down, Sophia rehearsed what she would say at the embassy, how she would convince them of Ari's identity. The lobby was empty except for the guard, who nodded absently as they passed. Outside, darkness had fallen. The street lamps cast pools of yellow light on wet pavement. It had rained while they were inside. Sophia pulled her coat tighter around herself and offered Ari her scarf again. "The bus stop is 2 blocks that way," she said, pointing. A black car pulled up to the curb beside them, its engine purring quietly. The window rolled down to reveal Mr. Kavrin's face, older and harder than Sophia had glimpsed in the park. Beside him sat another man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "Prince Ariston," Kavrin said smoothly, "you've led us on quite a chase today. Your father would be most disappointed in your behavior." Ari pressed against Sophia's side, his entire body trembling. "My father told me never to go anywhere with you alone," he said, his voice impressively steady despite his fear. "He said always insist on embassy personnel." A flash of annoyance crossed Kavrin's face. "Your father's instructions have been superseded by the current situation. Get in the car, Your Highness. We're already dangerously exposed." Sophia stepped slightly in front of Ari. "The boy comes with me," she said, her accent thickening with fear but her voice firm. "We go to embassy together." Kavrin's eyes narrowed as he assessed her. "You have no idea what you're involving yourself in, lady. This is a matter of national security. Step aside." Sophia stood her ground, though her knees felt like water. "If you are legitimate, you will take us both to embassy." "Official channels." Something dangerous flashed in Kavrin's eyes. He exchanged a glance with the scarred man, who reached inside his jacket. The gesture needed no translation. "Run," Sophia whispered to Ari, then shouted, "Help! Police!" They bolted, Sophia gripping Ari's hand as they darted down a side street. Behind them, car doors slammed. Footsteps pounded the pavement in pursuit. Sophia pulled Ari into an alley, then another, her cleaning job having familiarized her with the labyrinth of service passages between buildings. "I can't run much farther," Ari gasped as they emerged onto a busier street. Sophia spotted a hotel ahead, its lobby glowing with golden light. "Just a little more," she urged. "There." They hurried through the revolving doors into the hotel's opulent lobby. Sophia guided Ari directly to the front desk, where a professionally dressed woman looked up with practiced hospitality that faltered slightly at their disheveled appearance. "May I help you?" she asked uncertainly. Sophia drew herself up, summoning every ounce of dignity she possessed. "Yes. We need to contact Navardian embassy immediately. Emergency situation." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. "The Navardian embassy? I'm not sure we—" "Please," Ari interrupted, his voice suddenly carrying an unmistakable air of authority despite his youth. "I am Prince Ariston Thomas Markov of Navardia. I've escaped a kidnapping attempt. I need secure communication with my father's diplomatic team immediately." The receptionist stared, clearly caught between disbelief and the undeniable composure of the child before her. Let me get the manager." As she reached for the phone, Sophia glanced toward the entrance. Through the glass doors, she could see Kavrin scanning the street, the scarred man beside him. Any moment they might think to check the hotel. "Is there somewhere more private we could wait?" Sophia asked urgently. The receptionist, perhaps sensing their fear, nodded. "The business center. Through there, first door on the right. I'll send the manager to you." They had barely settled in the empty business center when the hotel manager arrived, a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor that softened when she saw Ari's exhausted face. "I understand we have an unusual situation," she began carefully. Ari stood straight, shoulders back, chin raised, every inch the royal he claimed to be. "My name is Prince Ariston of Nyvardia. I was separated from my father's security detail during our evacuation to the United States. The men pursuing me are not loyal to the crown. I need to contact the Nyvardian embassy immediately." The manager studied him for a long moment. "That's quite a claim, young man." "It's the truth," Sophia interjected. "Please, we are in danger. Those men will hurt him." "I can prove it," Ari said suddenly. He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a small birthmark on his inner arm. "The royal birthmark of the Markov line. It's been documented since my grandfather's time. And I have a royal identification code that can be verified by any embassy staff." Something in his earnest determination must have convinced the manager. "I'll make the call myself," she decided. "Wait here." The next hour passed in tense silence. Sophia and Ari huddled together in the business center, jumping at every sound. The manager brought them water and sandwiches, which Ari thanked her for with such genuine royal courtesy that Sophia saw the last of the woman's doubts fade. Finally, the manager returned with two stern-faced men in suits who identified themselves as security personnel from the Nyvardian embassy. "Your Highness," the taller one said, bowing slightly to Ari. "We've been searching for you for 2 days." Tears of relief filled Ari's eyes. "Dmitri," he said, recognizing the man. "Is my father safe?" "Yes, Your Highness. The king is secure in New York. He'll be overjoyed to hear you're safe." Dmitri turned to Sophia. "And you are?" Before Sophia could answer, Ari stepped forward. "This is Sophia Nazari. She saved my life. She protected me from Kavrin and his men at great personal risk." He stood tall, suddenly every inch the royal despite his small stature. "I formally request diplomatic protection for Ms. Nazari, who has proven herself a true friend of the Nyvardian crown." The security men exchanged glances. "That would be highly irregular, Your Highness," the second man began. "So is the attempted abduction of a crown prince," Ari countered firmly. "Ms. Nazari stays with me until my father can properly thank her. That is a royal command." Sophia stared at the child beside her, this boy who had transformed from a frightened refugee to a commanding prince before her eyes. He caught her gaze and the royal facade cracked just enough to reveal a grateful smile. "Of course, Your Highness," Dmitri conceded. "We should move quickly." "The car is waiting." As they were escorted to an armored diplomatic vehicle, Sophia felt a strange sense of unreality wash over her. 24 hours ago, she had been an invisible woman, an undocumented immigrant cleaning offices at night, sleeping on a pull-out couch in a shared apartment, sending what little money she could spare back to the remnants of her family. Now she was under the protection of a foreign embassy, sitting beside a prince whose hand still held hers tightly. "Are you okay?" Ari whispered as the car pulled away from the hotel. Sophia nodded, unable to find words. The boy, this remarkable child who had maintained his courage through terror and uncertainty, was asking if she was okay. "I should be asking you that question," she finally managed. Ari's smile was tired but genuine. "I knew we'd be okay once I found you. You remind me of my mother. She was brave like you." The simple words pierced Sophia's heart. "I'm not brave," she whispered. "I was terrified the whole time, but you helped me anyway," Ari said with the uncomplicated logic of childhood. "That's what bravery is." Sophia had no response to that. Instead, she squeezed his hand gently, and they rode in silence to the embassy. The next 48 hours passed in a blur. Sophia was given a room in the embassy's residential wing, a luxury beyond anything she'd experienced since fleeing Iran. Ari was reunited with his father via secure video call, their tearful conversation confirming beyond any doubt the boy's identity. King Thomas wept openly when Ari recounted Sophia's role in his rescue, promising her the eternal gratitude of the crown. By the second evening, arrangements had been made. Ari would be flown to New York on a diplomatic flight to rejoin his father. The king had insisted that Sophia accompany them, a request she initially refused, knowing the complications of her undocumented status. "We can resolve those issues," the embassy's diplomatic attaché assured her. "The king has authorized a special visa under royal dispensation. In fact," he added with carefully measured words, "His Majesty has mentioned the possibility of offering you political asylum in Navardia, should you wish it, with full citizenship." The offer left Sophia speechless. Citizenship, legal status, security, the things she had dreamed of while crossing borders in the dead of night, while working jobs no one else wanted, while sending precious dollars home to the family that remained. That evening, Ari found her on the embassy's small roof garden, staring out at the city lights. "We leave tomorrow," he said, coming to stand beside her. The diplomatic security guard assigned to him maintained a respectful distance by the door. "Yes," Sophia said softly. "You'll be with your father soon." "And you'll come to Navardia after?" Ari asked, his face earnest in the soft garden lights. "My father meant what he said. You would be given a home there, a position of honor in the royal household if you wanted it." Sophia looked down at this child who had entered her life so unexpectedly, who had trusted her when trust must have seemed impossible. "I have family still in Iran," she explained gently. "People who depend on the money I send." Understanding dawned in Ari's eyes. "They could come too. My father would arrange it." The possibility stunned her, so vast and sudden it seemed impossible to comprehend. Her remaining family, safe. Herself, a citizen rather than a shadow. A life rebuilt not from desperation but opportunity. "Why would he do so much for a stranger?" she whispered. Ari's answer was simple. "Because you didn't treat me like a prince when I needed help. You treated me like a child who was lost. That's worth everything to my father." 3 months later, Sophia stood on the balcony of her apartment in Navardia's capital city, watching snow fall over ancient stone buildings and modern glass towers. Behind her, the sounds of her mother and younger sister preparing dinner filled the space with a domesticity she had feared she would never experience again. Her mother's health had improved dramatically since their arrival, the royal physicians addressing the chronic conditions that poverty in Iran had left untreated. Her sister had enrolled in the city's international school, her quick mind flourishing with proper education. And Sophia herself had started university classes, her interrupted education finally resuming with a royal scholarship. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Prince Ari, more formally dressed than she'd ever seen him, flanked by royal guards who remained in the hallway. "Your Highness," she said with a small curtsy that still felt foreign to her. "What a surprise." Ari rolled his eyes at the formality. "It's just me, Sophia. Father and I were passing nearby and I wanted to see how you and your family are settling in." Sophia invited him inside, where her mother and sister greeted the young prince with warm respect. The domesticity of the scene, a royal prince sitting at their humble table, accepting a cup of tea from Sophia's mother, struck her as surreal. "We're adjusting well," Sophia told him as they once again stood on the balcony, watching the snow fall. "My mother's health improves every day. My sister loves her school." She hesitated. "And I've never felt so secure." Ari nodded, understanding the weight of that word. "Father has been talking about creating a new position. A cultural ambassador who would help other immigrants adjust to life here. He thought you might be interested." Sophia smiled. "He's very generous." "He's very grateful," Ari corrected. "We both are." He looked out at the snowy city, his profile suddenly serious beyond his years. "I've been having nightmares." "About what might have happened if you hadn't shared your lunch with me that day." Sophia placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "But I did. And here we are." Ari looked up at her, his eyes reflecting a wisdom no child should have to possess. "Sometimes the smallest kindness changes everything, doesn't it?" Sophia thought of her simple lunch, divided and shared on a park bench an ocean away, how that single moment had altered the trajectory of not only her life, but her family's. How a meal shared with a stranger had somehow led her here, to safety and possibility. "Yes," she agreed softly. "Sometimes it changes everything." The snow continued to fall, enveloping the city in pristine white, a clean slate, a fresh start. Sophia watched it with Ari in companionable silence, both of them contemplating the strange, winding paths that had brought them to this moment. An immigrant had shared her meal with a lost child, never imagining he was separated royalty, and that single act of kindness had transformed both their worlds. In the warm apartment behind them, Sophia's mother began to sing an old Persian song as she cooked, a sound Sophia had thought she might never hear again. Ari listened, entranced by the unfamiliar melody. "What is she singing about?" he asked. Sophia smiled, the words of the ancient song as familiar as her own heartbeat. "About finding home in unexpected places," she translated. "About how sometimes we must lose everything to find what truly matters." Ari nodded, understanding beyond his years. "Like you and me." "Like you and me," Sophia agreed, her heart full as the snow fell around them, blanketing their new shared homeland in possibilities as endless as the winter sky.